All right, welcome back to Tanya Summary Shiur. It's week 36 in Hara, and we're doing most of the first four chapters of Igeres HaKodesh, a little bit off the end of Parak Dalid, of letter Dalid. The letters of Igeres HaKodesh are not necessarily connected one to the next. They're all about the theme of improving in holy things, of davening or learning or tzedakah, mainly those three things. All holy things. It's called Igeres HaKodesh, the letters of holiness, or the letters of holy things for a reason. But anyhow, without any further ado, let's get right into it, starting with chapter 1. So in chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe encourages davening properly, and he does this pivoting off of good news that he heard by making a drasha on the pasuk, by making an exposition of the verse, which literally translates to, she girds her loins with might, and she strengthens her arms, which is a line taken from the poem Eishes Chayil, from the end of the book of Mishlei, of Proverbs, very classically said by many on Friday night, so it might be a familiar line. So anyhow, the Alter Rebbe expounds this verse. He says that he heard good news that people are studying Torah in public, and they're making a Cholukas HaShas, and he says this is very good news, and I appreciate it very much. And he says, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this pasuk of Chag Vayzos, essentially that the Masnayim, the loins, essentially referring to the legs, refers to emunah. It represents emunah. That we all, Yidden, have emunah, and this emunah is what we stand on as our foundation in serving Hashem. But the pasuk is saying it's important to gird the emunah with Torah, and particularly by studying the halachos of Torah, which is the will of Hashem. It's very powerful, it's mighty, and with this might, we're able to gird our emunah, we're able to strengthen our emunah, so that we'll be able to continue going and standing upon our emunah. Then the Alter Rebbe says the end of the pasuk is that she strengthens her arms. And the arms refers to the concept of midas, of emotive attributes, of love and fear of Hashem. And Kabbalistically, the concept of midas is compared to a bird that has wings, that it's like the arms of the bird, that the bird is able to fly by flapping the wings. So too, a person is able to soar through spiritual heights with emotions towards Hashem, with love and fear of Hashem. So when it says in the pasuk, it refers to the emotive attributes that a person can serve Hashem with, which is love and fear of Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe says that we need to strengthen them. So how are they strengthened? The Alter Rebbe says by taking our time to daven. So the Alter Rebbe then says, I'm setting out a few requests, which are essentially that people that don't have a job to rush to should be the ones to be chazan on a general basis, so that they'll be able to take their time davening. And he says that during Shabbos and Yom Tovim, certainly business people can be chazan as well, because they don't have a job to rush to, so they'll be able to take their time davening as well, but that it shouldn't be rushed business. And he says, I'm even possibly going to send out spies to different towns, so they can let me know who is taking up this idea that the non-business people should be davening for the Almud, so that people can take their times davening comfortably. So that is the first chapter of Igeres HaKodesh. The second chapter was written by the Alter Rebbe after he came out of prison in Petersburg. There was a libel against him from Misnagdim that they thought he was doing dangerous things, another Shabtai Tzvi perhaps, something to that effect. So essentially he was liable to the Russian government, and when they investigated, they found nothing wrong. The libel was essentially to the effect that the Alter Rebbe is trying to start a new religion, and unsurprisingly, the Alter Rebbe was not trying to start a new religion, so he was released and found innocent on all charges. So he wrote this letter to his chassidim following his release, and essentially it's about being humble. And it says in the pasuk that Yaakov Avinu said that I find myself smaller from all of the good things that Hashem did for me. So he says the simple meaning is that Yaakov Avinu found himself, that he thought about himself perhaps, that Hashem did so many good things for him that he used up all of his schar. But he says on a deeper level, it means that the closer that Yaakov Avinu found himself to Hashem, the more he appreciated how little he is. And the Alter Rebbe brings many examples of other great people who said the same thing, that it says, that everything that is before Hashem is like nothing. And the Alter Rebbe makes a diuk in this. He interprets it to mean that kula kamei, anything that finds itself before Hashem, when a person stands in the presence of Hashem, when they appreciate that they're standing in the presence of Hashem, because we're always standing in the presence of Hashem, when we appreciate that, we feel like Allah, we feel like nothing, because of the greatness of Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe urges and encourages his chassidim to not feel like, haha, we won, we beat the Misnagdim, we beat the libel. He said, don't feel like that. Feel humility before Hashem. And don't just feel in a superficial way. Feel really, truly humble. And he says, that maybe just perhaps if you feel this attitude towards the Misnagdim, that not that it's a competition or a fight, chas v'shalom, but rather just this is the will of Hashem and we feel humble before you, perhaps the Misnagdim will feel the exact same way back, as it says, Kamayim upon him, as water reflects the face of a person right back to them, so too the heart of a person reflects the heart of another person right back to them. And it should be that the Misnagdim will also feel humble towards the Chassidim, and we'll all be able to get along. Kanai Nahar were some 250 years after this, and Kanai Nahar, Chassidim and Misnagdim get along swimmingly. So Baruch Hashem, that this has at least to some extent come to fruition, although it could always be better, and we need more Avos Chinam and Avos Yisrael and Bittul. But anyhow, this is chapter 2 of Igeres HaKodesh. Chapter 3 of Igeres HaKodesh is about tzedakah. The Alter Rebbe darshes the pasuk of Vayelbish tzedakah kisir yain v'chayv Yeshua b'reishei, which means that he dressed himself in tzedakah, righteousness or charity, like chainmail, and he placed a helmet of salvation upon his head. It's a pasuk from Yeshaya, and the Alter Rebbe darshans it. So the Alter Rebbe says that the kunz of chainmail is that it's a bunch of little pieces that each one stops a certain hole where an arrow could have gone in. In regular armor, there's always going to be chinks. But with chainmail, even though it's a bunch of little pieces, it comes together to make something flexible, something movable, that ultimately has no holes in it. So the Alter Rebbe says the mitzvah of tzedakah is like this, because he says that tzedakah draws down divinity. We'll get to that at the end of Mitzvah Hashem, but it draws down divine sustenance into the world. That Hashem wants to give the world things when we do tzedakah. That being said, in general, when Hashem wants to give the world things, there's always a concern, which is that when we want things, for example, we want it to be in a proper way. We want it to come down in a way that we can appreciate it. Like, for example, when we ask for rain, farmers ask for rain. City dwellers don't often ask for rain. But when farmers ask for rain, they want that the rain should come down in a way that it's easy to process. If they would ask for 12 inches of rain, and 12 inches of rain would come slamming down at once, probably flood their fields, ruin their houses, it wouldn't be very geschmack. We want things to come down in a proper way. And in a spiritual sense, we refer to this as that the hashpah shouldn't go to klippos, that the sustenance should not go to the undesirable side, to the side which denies godliness, etc. Hashem sustains everything in the world, everything including the negative, and we want that only the positive should be sustained and not the negative. So this is almost comparable to when you have a suit of armor that you want to, not just that you want to protect things from getting in, but that you want to protect things from leaking out, like a shielding from the inside almost, that Hashem is trying to give to us, and we want that everything should stay inside, everything should be contained, and nothing should go to the wrong place. So the Alter Rebbe says that this is what it means when it says that tzedakah is compared to chainmail, that you could have armor that has holes in it. Chainmail is armor that every single little hole is covered up. So tzedakah makes that nothing is able to get out, no hashpah, no sustenance from Hashem goes to any undesirable places. It covers over every little hole. Then for the end of the pasuk, which is v'kova Yeshua b'reishei, that a helmet of salvation is on his head. So the Alter Rebbe says, I'll give you a slightly different translation of the word Yeshua. I'll say that it means to turn, that is to say to pay attention to. Like the pasuk says, Vayisha Hashem al Hevel vel minchasei, that Hashem turned to Hevel and to his mincha. So that is to say that ultimately divine sustenance comes from a much loftier source, and the Alter Rebbe says that this source is referred to when it says Kavir Yeshua B'Reishei, the same way the head is at the top of the body. It refers to the source of all sustenance that comes down to the world. So the Alter Rebbe says that tzedakah is also the Kavir Yeshua. It's also the helmet of, not just of salvation, but the helmet of turning, the helmet of inspiration that Hashem is inspired to look at the world and want to do good for the world. And the Alter Rebbe says that this is attained through tzedakah, some drashas of psukim that he gives for how we get there, but that is the short of it. And that concludes chapter 3 of Igeres HaKodesh. In chapter 4, the Alter Rebbe darshans the line of the Chachamim, in Yisrael Negalin Ela B'Tzedakah Shenamar V'Sheva B'Tzedakah. The Chachamim say that the Yidden are not redeemed from Golus with anything other than tzedakah. As it says in the pasuk that Zion will be redeemed with justice, and its captives will return with righteousness, with tzedakah. So the Chachamim say that the Yidden will be redeemed with tzedakah. So the Alter says to understand this. We also need to understand, it says in another pasuk, tzedek lefanav yahalech, that righteousness goes before him. The word yahalech is not technically grammatically correct. It should have been yelech. Yahalech means something almost that it's causative, that it's going to cause that tzedakah will go in front of it, not just that tzedakah will go in front of it. Stam. A little bit of a grammatical nitpick, and it's honestly shaykh to next week. It's at the end of the parak. So mainly to just focus on what the Alter is getting into here. And now. So there are two parts of our heart. There's everything besides for the very core of our heart, and then there's the core of our heart. So in general, when we serve Hashem with everything besides for the very core of our heart. For the core of our heart, even though it very much wants to serve Hashem, but we can't access it in a conscious way. And the reason for this is because it's captive. It's captive in the hands of physicality, of corporeality, of everything in this world that causes that we can't appreciate godliness in a face-to-face way, is the same thing that causes that we can't access the inner part of our heart, the innermost part of our heart. So the Alter Rebbe says that in Torah, it's compared to circumcision. We're told very often that either we need to circumcise our hearts or that Hashem needs to circumcise our hearts. This doesn't mean to do the physical act of circumcision, but it's analogous, because in physical circumcision, particularly in the mitzvah of bris milah, of ritual circumcision, which is a mitzvah that goes back to even before Matan Torah, so there are two parts of it. There is the milah, which is cutting off part of the tip, and there's the priya, which is slicing it so that it's able to be revealed. And the halacha is that milah without priya, the cutting without the slicing, is like there's no bris milah at all. You need to have both of them. So the Alter Rebbe says that in this analogy, we need to do the cutting. We need to cut off whatever negativity we possibly can to reveal our heart as much as we can until the innermost aspect, which we can't reveal on our own. And this is why in some places it says that we need to be the ones to circumcise our hearts. The Alter Rebbe says that the end, the very refined bit, the slicing, the careful slicing to make sure that everything is revealed, that is done by Hashem, and that will be when Mashiach comes, that Hashem will properly reveal our hearts. That is to say, in the innermost aspect of our hearts, so that we can serve Hashem with literally everything that we have. So the Alter Rebbe says, how do we do our part? How do we cut off what we're able to cut off? The Alter Rebbe says, this is by virtue of giving tzedakah. And he brings out a very beautiful point, which is that when a person gives tzedakah, they're, in a sense, giving from their own physicality, from their own corporeality to serve Hashem. They're cutting it away and they're giving it to Hashem. Because money can be used to buy food. Not only can it be used to buy food, but very often people work for a living, and they're investing their whole self into the world, into physicality, which is in a sense going directly into the hands of the klippah. That is to say that they're being invested, they're investing themselves in the world, which is, in a sense, a denial of Hashem, a world which doesn't acknowledge Hashem in a conscious way. But then a person is able to do a complete 180, take that money that they earned, that money that they could have used to buy food, again, to become invested in the world. A person is able to take that money and they're able to give it to tzedakah. They're able to serve Hashem with their crystallized effort, with their crystallized essence of what they can use to buy food and to exist in the world. They could take that and they could turn around and give it to Hashem. Give it to tzedakah. So when we do this, we're able to take our own corporeality, our own physicality, and use it to serve Hashem. That is the milah that we can do. That is the way that we are able to circumcise our hearts. And this is what it means, v'shavah b'tzedakah, that ultimately we're going to come to redemption from captivity. We're going to be able to come to it through the mitzvah of tzedakah. Next week, the Alter Rebbe is going to continue on this theme to explain the concept of tzedek l'fanav yahalech, which we referenced before, and many more interesting things in the coming chapters. Looking forward to Hashem.